Hello folks, welcome to UK car news for April 2023. Happy Sunday if you're actually watching this on Sunday. Just to start things off, on Friday the 28th of April, I'm going to be at Fully Charged Live in Farnborough. There are still tickets available. I'm only going to be there on the Friday. If you're going to be there too and you follow me on Twitter or Instagram, somewhere like that, do send me a message, come along, say hello. Be good to meet some of you there. And I'll be joined at Fully Charged by Alex Lowe, who's my co-presenter on the Charging Status podcast. I'll put a link to it in the video description if you haven't heard it yet. It's an EV podcast. I know that's not everyone's thing. It's an EV podcast. There's one a month. It's available on all the podcast platforms. As I said, I'll put a link in the video description. Okay, folks, starting things off with Auto Express smart motorways ban. The government halts the rollout and plans changes to existing roads. Rishi Sunak has announced a ban on new smart motorways in the UK, halting 14 projects across the country. I don't know your thoughts on this, but I think it's massively good news. I think smart motorways are just ridiculous. They're not smart at all. I think they're idiotic. I think the idea of it in general is not necessarily a terrible one, but in practice, of course, they've led to a number of deaths. So for me, it was a bad idea in the first place. I don't know really how it ever got off the ground. It got as much investment as it did, but there will be no more. Onto the London ULEZ expansion, Sadiq Khan faces court battle over plans. The High Court's agreed to hear a challenge from the London boroughs opposed to the new daily tax for drivers. Obviously, this doesn't mean that we're not going to get to July and this doesn't happen. It just means that the court's agreed to hear the case. And if you're not aware, in July, basically every area of London that's sort of bounded by the M25 will have to pay £12.50 per day if you're in a non-ULEZ compliant vehicle. There will be lots of people upset on both sides if it does go through or if it doesn't go through. Hopefully more news on that coming soon. Only in Dubai, folks, the world's most expensive car number plate sells for £12 million. 12 million quid for a number plate. I mean, really, it's not even a funny double entendre or anything. It's the number 7. It's just a number 7. 12 million quid. This is an interesting one. Jaguar Land Rover are rebranding to JLR, but it looks like they're going to drop the name Land Rover from most of their vehicles. So a Range Rover will now just be a Range Rover. A Defender will be a Defender. It's not going to be a Land Rover Range Rover. It's not going to be a Land Rover Defender. A Jaguar is going to be a Jaguar, funnily enough. Their Chief Creative Officer, Jerry McGovern, says the reality is Range Rover is a brand and so is Defender. Customers say they own a Range Rover. They don't say they own a Land Rover Range Rover. Jaguar is going to be reborn as an electric only brand, and the conversation here is basically they want to get Jaguar back to where it was years ago, which is producing real luxury cars and I guess improving their reliability. Staying with JLR for a second, they've confirmed that they won't be producing a battery plant in the UK. This is really bad news. Obviously it would have created lots of jobs and lots of new infrastructure within the UK. But it looks like the owners of JLR Tata are going to instead build that plant somewhere in Europe. Autocar again for this one, and cheap EV charging cables are putting owners' lives at risk. That's according to an electrical safety charity. Apparently people are buying charging cables from eBay and Amazon from sort of unknown brands, and actually they're not particularly safe. They've said that these cables often come from China where a 16 amp rating is the norm, and over here it's 13 amp. So that extra current comes along the cable, melts the plug socket, bosh, could cause a big fire. They've said that they recommend people only purchase a cable rated at 10 amps. Also folks, just get it from somewhere reliable. You don't want to be cutting costs on things like that, do you? Folks, today's video is sponsored by Surfshark One, which is an amazing new suite of products from Surfshark. Firstly, you've got Surfshark's famous VPN offering. Not sure what that is? Check this out. You can see here that a simple search of my IP address has detected my location. Now let's go to Surfshark, and this is how quickly it connects. There you go, we're done. New York City, and there's the full IP of where we're connected. Next, you've got a full antivirus package including real-time protection and webcam protection. Surfshark Search is a lightweight tool that means there are no logs, no ads, no trackers, no anything when you search online. And finally, Surfshark Alert that notifies you of any data breaches where it finds your personal data leaked anywhere online. If you go for the 24-month package, this is all available for just £3.21 a month, which I think is fantastic value. Please click the link in the video description and pinned as the top comment. It'll take you straight to the Surfshark One page so you can read more for yourself and sign up if you'd like to. It helps support the channel, and I really appreciate Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Renault have taken a bit of a bold gamble here, and it's good news for you lovers of fossil fuels. The refreshed Mark V Super Mini Renault Clio will be sold solely with a hybrid powertrain when it arrives later this year. Obviously, Ford are pulling the Fiesta. Quite a few small cars will no longer be around in a petrol option or even a hybrid option, and they'll be EV only. And Renault has sort of taken the bold step of saying, well, sod it, we'll put a hybrid out and we think we'll sell a lot of them. For those of you that hate electric cars with your entire being, the rest of this is not going to be a massive interest to you because it's nearly all electric car stories. That's not because I'm picking out electric car stories, that's because car news at the moment, and probably for the foreseeable future, is going to be 90% EV, because 90% of the cars coming out are EV, so it kind of makes sense. I'm just letting you know so I don't get loads of complaints in the comments about, oh, it's just an EV channel. It's not, it's a car channel, but all the new cars coming out pretty much are EVs. So over to Auto Express again, the new Watt ECV1 electric van revealed. This is a British firm, Watt Electric Vehicle Company, and they are producing this, which is a very interesting looking thing. Look, delivery van. This was shown at the Commercial Vehicle Show in Birmingham last week. I didn't go, but my compadre Alex from the Charging Status podcast did, so no doubt we'll have some news from that on next month's Charging Status podcast. Now, Watt Electric Vehicle Company, WEVC, currently has facilities in Cornwall, that's their R&D centre, and Worcester for their engineering works, but they're planning to build a factory for these in Britain, which will be capable of producing 5,000 vans a year. Great news to hear any kind of four-wheeled industry going on in the UK these days, so I really hope they do well. The Civic Type R breaks the Nurburgring lap record. Honda reclaims hot hatch record on the Nordschleife. This seems to be obligatory now. If you come out with a new fast car, it has to go and break the record at the Nurburgring. No surprise that the Type R's done it. I still haven't driven one yet, but I've heard amazing things about them. It did it in 7 minutes 44.8 seconds, adding to its lap record at the Honda-owned Suzuka track in Japan. Ford Blue Cruise, UK's first legal hands-free driving tech, arrives. It's the first hands-free driving system to be available on cars sold in the UK. This looks a bit bananas. What do you think, folks? It allows drivers to remove their hands from the wheel in certain pre-mapped motorways in the UK. System works at speeds up to 70 miles an hour with radar and cameras monitoring road marking signs and changing traffic conditions. Also checks on the driver to make sure they're paying attention to the road ahead. It's going to work on a subscription basis. It's going to cost you £17.99 a month, folks, and it's going to work on 2,300 miles of the UK's motorways. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments. The Aura Funky Lightning Cat, yes, that is a real name, has been shown at the Shanghai Motor Show. Loads of stuff coming up from Shanghai, so I'm really going to whip through these because there are just so many new EVs. I've been invited by Aura at Fully Charged to go and see the unveiling of their next model to come to the UK. Don't know what it is, but I'm guessing it might be this. I will be there, and I am going to have a word with the boss of Aura in the UK, so that should be quite interesting. But what do we think of this? You can certainly see a lot of Porsche in that, can't you? And yeah, a lot of Porsche in that. There's the interior. On that funky cat I had recently, there is a review of that on the channel if you haven't seen it yet. I was really impressed by the build quality of the thing. It's an interesting car, and I really look forward to seeing that in the flesh. Look at this one, by the way. I think they've had a little bit of inspiration from the Germans with this one. What do we think? Just something about it reminds me of something. What could that possibly be? Obviously, there are no specs for the UK version of this car at the moment, but the Chinese one, they're saying possibly up to 400 miles of range and a 0 to 62 time of 4.3 seconds. Yikes. In our next interestingly named car, the Build Your Dream Seal, yes, has had its UK specs announced ahead of its 2023 launch with up to 523 brake horsepower. So BYD already has the Atto 3 available in the UK, but this new Seal is going to be positioned above both it and the forthcoming Dolphin hatchback, which is coming out around about late summer, I believe. Yeah, it does. It says exactly late summer. They're saying here it's going after the Tesla Model 3 and the N version of the Ioniq 6. Two motors for four-wheel drive, combined output of 523 brake horsepower, and can reach 62 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds. So it looks like there are going to be a couple of versions of this, much like with the Tesla Model 3. You'll have a standard version and a spicy version. The standard rear-wheel drive one will get you a 0 to 62 of 5.9, 308 horsepower and 354 miles of range. The spicier version will give you four-wheel drive, 523 brake horsepower and 62 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds, but the range will be slightly less at 323 miles. Again, we're very used to seeing that with other performance EVs. The range usually takes a slight hit to kind of allow for that performance. Both versions are going to get 150 kilowatt DC charging, and a heat pump is standard on all versions, which is good news. It's thought the standard version is going to be around about 41 grand, and the range topping version around about 50 grand. Folks, you will not have missed, I'm sure, the launch of the Polestar 4 this week. Very interesting because it doesn't have a back window. Car companies keep getting rid of the rear wiper, don't they? But now we've got one that's actually just completely done away with the rear window. Your rear view mirror will now be a screen for a rear mounted camera, and I don't know what to make of this. I think it's a really good looking vehicle. I just don't know why it doesn't have a back window. It feels like a gimmick to me. They say the advantage is that the cameras give you a wider field of vision than you would get with the glass. And although it doesn't have a rear window, it has got a big glass roof. And it looks like there'll be plenty of light in there. There's also some kind of light bar behind the rearmost seats. So very interesting from Polestar. And they're certainly not playing it safe, are they? They've gone with a bold move there. We'll have to wait and see if that proves to be a hit or a failure. Right, new Toyota BZ3 electric saloon makes its debut at Shanghai. Let's just have a look at this. I'm not going to go through all the numbers on these because there are just so many of them. But there it is. Looks a bit like a Prius and a bit like a BZ4X, as you might expect from a new Toyota saloon. At the moment it's going to be China only, with no plans for it to come to Europe. The new smart number 3, or the smart #3, debuts at Shanghai with sleek coupe style body. It's going to be a very spicy Brabus version of this with 422 brake horsepower. That's going to debut in Europe in September, and then we'll possibly see it in 2024. Okay, so Zeekr have confirmed that they're coming to Europe, and the UK could follow with the Zeekr X and the Zeekr 001. Now, this is a brand from Geely, who obviously own Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, Lynk & Co. They could offer 350 miles of range. There's really very little detail at the moment, but they look a bit like this. That rear quarter is reminiscent of something like a DS3 in my eyes. As the interior, I think maybe a little bit of a tip of the hat to the Ioniq 5 there. Looks like you've got reclining front seats with leg rest. That's quite nice. So that one's the X. This one's the 001, which is more of a kind of, I don't know, saloon, coupe, crossover, hatchbacky kind of thing. Are there any kinds of car I haven't mentioned? I don't think so. Next, we've got the VW ID.7 revealed in Shanghai. Obviously, we've seen that in camouflage recently. I think in the Easter video a couple of weeks ago, I talked about this and gave you all the numbers, so I'm going to move quickly on. But this is it without its camo, and we're seeing some interior shots for the first time. There we go. It feels like an evolution from the Passat. I don't mind it, actually. It's quite a nice looking car. Next, we've got the new Mercedes Maybach EQS SUV revealed as the ultimate luxury electric car. The opulent Mercedes Maybach EQS SUV is set to cost around 250 grand when it goes on the sale towards the end of 2023. I'm going to tell you now, I'm not going to buy one of these. There are only 250,000 reasons why not, however. It's going to be built on the same EV2 platform as other EQE and EQS models. Here it's fitted with a dual motor setup producing 649 brake horsepower and 950 Newton meters of torque. The same setup's found in the EQS 53 saloon. 370 miles of range, 200 kilowatt DC charging, which will give you 136 miles of range in just 15 minutes, and a 0 to 62 time of 4.4 seconds. What do we think of this, folks? Do we like it? Do we not? I don't think it looks like a £250,000 car. That does. That looks amazing. That interior looks absolutely phenomenal. The outside of it, meh. Now check this one out, folks. It's an MG. This is the new MG7. I've just got to go straight to the pictures because it's a beautiful looking car. I mean, look at this thing. I guess it's taken on the Audi A7. Right, let's read about it, shall we, before I get too excited. Right, this is going to be a petrol car, and because it's going to be a petrol car, it looks like they won't offer it in the UK. The extra engineering work required for hybrid technology plus right-hand drive conversion is unlikely to make it economically viable in Britain. 2-litre turbo with 254 brake horsepower, 405 newton meters of torque, or a 1.5 turbo with 183 bhp. That's a lovely looking car, that really is. I would never have guessed that was an MG had you covered the badge up. Check this one out. Chinese brand Hi-Fi is coming to the UK. It will sell cars in Europe by the end of 2023 with right-hand drive models for the UK set to follow. Their chief technical officer came from Jaguar Land Rover, Mark Stanton. He said, we'll definitely be going right-hand drive and going to the UK. I just can't tell you when yet. So it looks like it's got the Hi-Fi Y, X and Z. And this is the Y, evidently, with, wow, look at that crazy roof thing. It's kind of half a Tesla Model X. That's an interesting vehicle, isn't it? Wow. We are seeing some weird and wonderful cars coming out of China now. I must admit, with the invasion of all these Chinese brands, I thought we would get a lot of cookie cutter cars, but there are some interesting things appearing, aren't there? The MG Cyberster has been revealed ahead of its UK arrival in 2024. This is a very good looking little sports roadster. Very MX-5. But there's also a little bit of Jag thrown in there for good measure, as far as I'm concerned. Not enough detail of interest in there to continue, so I'll move on. The BYD Seagull's a sub £8,000 electric super mini for China. That's not coming to the UK, but it's going to have 100 horsepower and 252 miles of range, and it's going to cost £7,700. Now, to put that into context, that's an EV with 250 miles of range that's half the price of the cheapest petrol car in the UK at the moment. That's astounding. I know they're producing a lot of cheap EVs in China now, but we're not getting them over here. And obviously, if we did, they would cost a significant amount more because they'd have to do a right-hand drive conversion for what is quite a small market in comparison to most of the rest of the world. And we'd obviously have to pay loads of import and export fees and what have you on top of it. But £7,700 with 250 miles of range, however good or bad it is, it's pretty impressive. The new 2024 Audi A8 poised to be the brand's most powerful EV yet. The new flagship German saloon gets autonomous drive, 800-volt charging, and will be among the longest range EVs on sale. It's expected to have a 120 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery and 466 miles of range. And if it is the most powerful car in the Audi range, that will have a 0 to 62 time of less than 4 seconds. Thanks ever so much for watching. Have a good one. See you soon.